Welcome to Cut Daisies and Unicorns, and it's another day in the studio, and we're really getting into the flow now. We talked about rhythm before, but now it's a flow.
Yeah, baby. Now we're talking about the flow.
Right.
You got to go with the flow.
And a flow is always good.
Or do you have to go with the flow?
A nice flow. Nice flow.
Are we two lonely voices out in the universe calling out for going against the flow?
Right.
Yeah. Makes me wonder.
And going against the flow is also good.
You got to choose which paddle or which direction you're going to paddle.
Uh-huh.
Are you going against the flow? Or are you going with the flow?
Yeah, with using a two-person kayak.
You had an experience, didn't you?
Right. Going against the flow can be tough.
Oh my gosh, right, dude? Oh, so I started telling you this story last week of this guy that I met.
Right.
And he's working at the dealership. Gotta do routine maintenance on the vehicle. And so anyway, this kid was an assigned driver. And so he drove me, dropped me off at the house, and then turned around and he picked me up to go pick up the car. And so we were going by Skokie Lagoons, and this dude, I'm like, yeah, see, and I'm like, this is a great little chain of lagoons and stuff like that. And I'm like, you see that cargo container over there? He's like, yeah. I said, yeah, that's full of like canoes and kayaks, so you don't have to own one. I said, I don't want to own a kayak. And he go, now I'm thinking, I don't want to own a kayak because then I got to put a roof rack on and then I got to lift it over my head and I got to put it on the vehicle to be able to get to the place that I'm going to kayak at. Is there a thought in my head that I'd like to kayak on Lake Michigan? Yeah, there is. But I would like to do it in a dangerous situation. I would wear a life vest. But, and so anyway, and he's like, oh, me, I'm the opposite. He goes, I own a kayak. Mm. I'm like, what? Now, this kid's got hair down to his shoulders, or lower.
Yeah.
And he just got this vibe and kind of a bobblehead a little bit.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, man. Yeah, pandemic hit. He goes, my first place to go, I went to Dick's Sporting Goods and bought a kayak. I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, at the time I was living with my mom and dad, and they were right next to one of these lakes and stuff like that, or this river. I don't know if it was like North Branch Chicago River or something,
Yeah.
He goes, yeah, you just get a 12er and you float. He goes, every once in a while, the police, they roll up to you and in your thing. Like if the Marine police are coming up to you, they've already seen you drinking.
Right.
But he's not thinking about that. And I'm like, oh, really? He goes, yeah, so I just tucked the can underneath my my seat, and I'm just like, hey, it's all good. They talk to you for a little bit, check out where your head's at, and then move on. Mm-hmm. I'm like, sweet. He goes, yeah, when I was living with my mom and dad. And he goes, I just float, call my dad. He goes, and he'd come and get me, and he'd drive me home. And he goes, just being buzzed and floating down the river, that's my thing. I really enjoy it. I'm like, wow.
All right.
So anyway,
that is a mood. That is a mood.
He goes, you know how many times I've driven past this place? I just thought it was a container. I'm like, oh no, you can actually rent a kayak. Which is, one of the things on my checklist where I'm like, I'd really like to do that, but I never
do.
I never plan to, and it's just not. I have mentioned it a couple times,
right,
as a spontaneous event, but nobody in our home bites.
My in-laws have kayaks, like they have their, couples kayaks. They bring it, to different spots throughout Arizona so far, but
really,
yeah, they haven't ever traveled out here with their kayaks,
right?
though. But maybe I can tell them that Steve wants to jump in a kayak. Bring your kayaks next time.
I've been, like, for 2 weeks, I've been meaning to go down to the lakeshore and pick up some more stones, some rocks.
Yeah.
Not the rocks of offense.
Right.
But I've been collecting, just picking up stones all over the world for the last decade or whatever, and so anyway, I go looking for interesting shaped. Oftentimes what I'm looking for is the right size that would end up polishing down, that would make a lovely necklace. I'm not saying I'm getting into jewelry officially.
Yeah.
But I, as a guy who grew up in Michigan, who has a fondness for Lake Michigan and all the surrounding lakes, or the biggest freshwater ocean, on the planet. It's just one of those things. And so every time I'm just like, about the time I'm like, man, I need to, go down to the lake and pick up some more stones, because I bought a stone polisher.
Wow.
Yeah. But here's one of those projects. In theory, you'd be able to do a stone polisher and it does the work for you. But you have to run that 24 hours a day for 5 days for each stage going through, and there's 3 stages. So to polish a stone would take about 3 weeks.
Wow.
And technically, if you add up all the days, if you had three fives is 15, technically it's 2 weeks straight. But you think of, weekends and holidays, do you let the stones rest?
I never even knew the process was so extensive. What is wrong? Like, I mean, what does it look like when it comes? I mean, is it just really shiny then, or
you've never seen a polished stone?
I mean, I guess that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't even know. I've seen stones that have been like in, stores or whatever. I'm assuming that they went through a polishing process, but I didn't know that it was like 3 days in order to get to a polished state.
No, not 3 days. 5 days for
5.
3 stages.
Oh, 3 stages.
So you've got your rough mix that is going to take off all the sharp edges and whatever. It's a coarse, I think they call it coarse, medium, and fine. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you get into where basically what this abrasive is doing is wearing it down, and then these rocks are tumbling against themselves. And I actually got a dual chamber tumbler, which breaks out into I tumble for you.
Tumble for you.
Yeah. So, but I thought, well, and where the idea came from is that when I was like initially starting to make pottery,
yeah,
I was thinking about sellable items. There's 2 different scopes of what's going on with this pottery studio. Yeah. Actually, there's multiple. It's kind of like a little diamond that you look into. It's very much in the rough. I might just be an old chunk of coal.
Lots of prisms.
Yes, prisms to look through. So one of the things is art.
Yeah.
Art's what comes out of you. It's not for sale. Art's what comes out of, if somebody shows up with a checkbook and wants to buy it, well, then that's the thing. But, I mean, like, art is just art for the sake of creating. It doesn't have to look like anything. It doesn't have to be anything. It can be, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
So there's that part. Wacky, wild, just like people are like, what in the world is that? I wouldn't give you 2 cents for it. I'm like, yeah, I didn't ask for 2 cents for it. It was in me and it came out. So then there's art. Here's the other thing. There's fine art. Trained art.
Who distinguishes that?
I think the flow. Yeah, the flow. The people who are the people with lots of money who want to establish what a line is and how this all works out, And actually, this is hilarious. So dropping stuff off at the UPS store last week, I look across the street in one of the empty storefronts. There's a sign that says, "Coming soon, Fine Gardening Center." So there's
fine gardening too.
There's fine art. There's fine dining. And so now there's fine gardening.
Wow.
Hello, Mom. Can I sell you a hat for $350 so you don't get your sun on your brim? You know, I mean, like, what in the world? Yeah. So,
Who knew? Who knew?
so then one of my ideas was, I was like, you know what? I'll do like wine tumblers, those little stemless wine glasses. Not so little. I mean, everybody needs a good cup.
Sure.
And so there's that. And then whiskey tumblers. So my idea was polishing stones that I get for free to be able to be stones that you put in the freezer so you don't use ice.
Right.
Yeah. Because don't you have bullets or something?
I have multiple, so I have, I do have bullets, and I also have stones. So I've got, multiple whiskey, non-diluting of
Coolers. Chillers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
William Macy. I picked up the cooler with Katherine Heigl and William Macy.
Mm-hmm.
It was a little too skin tony for me, so I threw it away. But the he's a cooler, and his luck changes, and blah 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 blah. Yeah. So tumbling stones. And I haven't even pulled the thing out of the box to see how big the tumblers are to take, you know, because I mean, I have probably a fair amount of stones collected already that I'm excited about seeing what they'll tumble to. But in me, I'm like, yeah, I need to stock
And then
up
you
on-
can do multiple stones at a time. Then, right?
like it's a batch.
Okay.
Yeah,
it.
like, I mean, depending on the size of but what you have to figure out, and I don't know what this is that as they tumble, it takes part of the stone off.
Oh.
So you can't start too small, or the stone just goes away to sand, you know. And it depends on the hardness of the stone.
What kind of rock it is.
Sandstone, granite, you know, not granite, but, you know, like, yeah. And then the other thing is that, have you heard the term sea glass?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's sea glass, which is basically our waste thrown into the sea, tumbled around, broken up, and spit out.
Right.
But people pick up sea glass in Lake Michigan. And my favorite place to pick sea glass, Hong Kong. When I was there with my buddy Chris,
Yeah.
and actually one of the beaches that they lived on was prolific with sea glass, and they turned it into a not-for-profit jewelry group
Yeah.
that sells jewelry to be able to fund the nonprofit space for women who are trafficked to be able to get the lawyers involved and get their visas back and be able to have a life that's not indentured.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's a good cause then.
it is a good cause. I have my Chicago wear on. When I was thinking about what I was going to wear, I brought my hoodie because it's raining today.
Because it is that weather.
And yep, if you're looking for a Jedi Knight,
Right.
he is wearing a Drive-By Truckers hoodie today. favorite sweatshirt ever that I picked up when I was on the road to see a Drive-By Truckers show. I think it was Drive-By Truckers in Lucero, with my buddy Matt Handley. Bought the sweatshirt. The zipper went bad. And I was like, you know what? I really like that sweatshirt. And so Amy's like, well, why not have JD put a new zipper in it? I'm like, ha! Brilliant! It can be that easy.
Good call, Amy.
Yeah. So, you know, on a $35 sweatshirt back in 2000 and, where are we at? 22 right now. So it's probably 2016. So the sweatshirt lasted about 5 years on its own. Add $25 for a new metal zipper to be put into place. And you know what this has done? It saved me buying 3 other sweatshirts. Because about the time I do, I'm like, why would I replace my favorite?
Right.
And there's no holes in it.
And it's a good investment.
I haven't worn any holes in this thing, and it's my favorite. And I keep, like, just as I peel the onion away towards some, it's not really minimalism. It's what is the word? The word is like it's compartmentalized chaos. That's my life. I work towards it.
So you try to keep your chaos in boxes.
Yeah, exactly.
Like here's this chaos over here, and there's this chaos over here.
Yeah. And so my chaos at home is like minimalized. But my chaos in the studio is maximized. So, think about that. You might be telling yourself that you're one thing, but maybe you've compartmentalized.
Yeah.
Apparently, Steve's having a rough time with words this morning. I was telling Phil earlier, I'm like, I feel animated.
Right.
You know what? Here's the deal. My head's going so fast, my mouth can't keep up. Which is usually the opposite of my problem.
So if there's anybody who animates out there, Steve really should be animated. So take him, animate him. We were even talking about claymation, turning Steve into a claymation character.
Which made me think about my favorite kind of vacation, which is a staycation. Yeah. People are like, you're a homebody. I'm like, well...
It happens.
Life is an adventure, no matter where you are, if you make it one. Speaking of vacations and staycations and just question. Okay, so I'm the guy with technology that doesn't take it to its nth degree. What I love the nerds who are able to take something and then they just exploit it to the edge of whatever it could handle. For instance, if you have an iPad, do you use your iPad as a Kindle? Like to read books?
Yeah, so I mean there is an actual Kindle app that you can use your Kindle books, but there's also Apple books too. So
right. Yeah. Okay. So
there's lots of ways.
That's one technology.
It is.
And with all the apps, there's a lot of different things you can do with an iPad.
For sure.
And with an iPencil, then you can convert this digital technology, which is really just ones and zeros, all done in lots of different ways.
Right.
Okay. So
it's the Matrix.
Yeah. So then you're doing this. So I mean, and actually, Apple just released the iPad Air and said your next computer isn't a computer.
Right.
So then you've got this thing that's just a little sliver of doesn't weigh much, and you can get a keyboard for it and all this other stuff.
Yeah, I think they were trying to compete again with Microsoft Surface. So.
Yeah, there's no question.
Right.
Which, if you're a person who uses a computer and all you're using the computer for is searching and email, you may just as well have a tablet.
Why not?
I mean, why carry around 12 pounds of... Do you remember when the computers weighed that much?
I do. I remember having one. I'm like, throwing it in a bag. I needed reinforced straps in order to carry this thing around.
Right, yeah. You go through more backpacks than you would a computer, unless it's Windows-based, and then there's so many viruses, you're throwing that computer out anyways. Yeah, so that's why I'm...
That's got a 2-year shelf life at best.
Well, I mean, they're made for commerce. They're made to wear out and not work so that you can have to buy another one.
Right.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I had Chris Fordyce, speaking of nerds, a guest that we've had on the show.
Right.
I had him take the guts out of a 2008 MacBook Pro, and he put in a solid state hard drive. Because of the programming that has changed, we got two major things going on. When people are like, how come my phone's so slow, or how come my computer's so slow? Well, because of the advancement, it's taking more space to code. So when you go over into that part about my computer and you take a look, when the operating system takes 100 gig, and you got a 250 gig hard drive, and you're like, where'd all my space go? And it's the space that's driving what's going on. But the cool thing is the computer was only made for 4 gig of RAM initially. But because of the advancement encoding, it allowed it not to be doubled, but quadrupled. So you can have 16 gig of RAM,
Right.
which RAM is random access memory, which means it's not permanent. It's just a space where the programs are able to work their way out versus what you've got saved on.
Which means you can process more of the things at the same time. So you can have your internet or Windows open.
Yep.
You can have your documents open. You can have multiple things that it's processing at once. Now, if you've got a slower RAM speed,
Right.
and you have more windows open that you're not willing to shut down, then you're going to run slow.
Yeah.
And your computer's going to be like, got that.
Yeah. It turns the fan on because it's working hard.
Right.
And if you're rendering video and you're doing, stuff like that,
right.
and everybody at home is going like, come on, we're not doing that. And that's my point. Why would you spend $2,000 or $3,000 on a computer when really an iPad Pro? Hashtag not a sponsor.
Not yet a sponsor.
Not yet.
Apple.
Speak that into the universe. But, and so but I'm telling you, full confession, I understand these things. I do not work hard to utilize them to their extremes.
Yeah, I would say that. I don't either.
I got a new iPhone in the last 4 months or whatever. I did it because to be able to get the transfer over from Sprint to, T-Mobile. Yeah, then they're like, oh, you have to upgrade your hardware, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, you know what? I've got a peace sign for you that starts in the middle of my hand. And so anyway, went ahead to do that. And, it's just one of those things where, like, I go to try to turn down the volume and I'm taking screenshots.
Right, because the screenshot is the power button and the up button, or volume button.
Yeah, but because of where the volume button, since they switched where the volume button is, then I have to reach across the phone because I got my wallet on my phone, but I reach across the phone, my thumb is on the power button while I'm trying to turn up the volume. Oh my gosh. So then I'm going through my photos weekly to delete screenshots that I've accidentally...
I just did that recently too.
See, I mean,
and I don't even have an updated. I mean, mine's like 10 or something, but yeah.
Well, I had a 7.
Oh yeah, that's
so like from 7 to 13. I got a fair share of wear out of it.
That's significant.
Yeah, and that also tells you how insignificant technology is in my life. Because I was doing fine. I went in just to change my plan over.
Right.
And they told me I had to update.
Well, you went from a 7 that had a home button to no home button.
That pisses me off, too. I mean, like, and then all of a sudden, so you know what I'm doing? I'm not doing facial recognition. You know what that means? If somebody kills you, they grab your phone, they can hold it in front of your face, and they can open your phone.
As long as your eyes are open.
All it takes is a couple clothespins.
Right.
But I go back to that to say, just because something's available doesn't necessarily mean that it's something that you should do.
Right. Which I think leads us to game-changing things, right?
Well,
I mean, that's where you were going,
that's
right?
exactly where I was going.
I mean, so, and this is where I feel like with the conversation about game changers, you can say there are things that changed the game that also weren't good. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, so there is some technology that you'd say, man, this really changed the scope and the direction of where you're going with whatever piece. And when you were talking about smartphones. Smartphones changed the game.
Yep.
Absolutely, with a ton of things. Now, is it good?
For people and against people.
Right.
Yeah.
Now you'd say, all right, so you can argue then the ethics of technology change.
Yeah.
And especially those big game-changing pieces.
Mm-hmm.
So you're absolutely looking at, so a smartphone, it was for sure a game changer, but there's also aspects of the, privacy of smartphones that are not good.
Yeah.
I mean, that opened the door for a lot of things that you have to continue to say, like what you're using my data. Like, how is it that you're using? What are you using? What are you selling? What are you passing along to somebody? I mean, there's all kinds of privacy issues, which is now even what they tried to correct since the beginning of it with, I think the latest versions, they have like every web page you open, like, do you accept these cookies? Do you accept, and every app, it's like if you use it again, if it's the first time you're using it, then it's going to say, hey, go through and put, what privacy level you want on this. And you're like, oh, but then you put like low. And they're like, yeah, well, the app doesn't work low. Like, okay, so you're telling me that I don't so I either, if I like the app or I like the, what this is doing, but you're telling me I have to be able to sacrifice something in order to use it.
Yeah.
Like, is that good?
Yeah.
So, game changers, not always positive.
Not always positive.
Yeah, so I always think about like, because you look at actual games, you look at baseball.
Okay.
And so baseball and the rules of baseball have changed over the course of history.
Really?
Yeah. So if you're, and minor things that actually lead to something that's bigger. So you look at like small changes, like, they were, the game was slowing down. And so they're like, how can we speed this game up? Right, because people complain like, "Oh, this takes too long." Like, you're sitting if you're watching the game and it's like 3 hours long now, you're like, "How can we speed this up?" Well, part of what they did, recently was like, hey, with relievers that are coming in, they have to face a minimum of 3 batters. Like, you can't do the one and one, like, and back and forth between relievers. You have to leave them in for at least 3 batters.
Huh.
Why? Because they said, doesn't matter how, like, they come in and they stink, like, it doesn't matter. You got to face 3 batters because this is going to speed things up. Instead of you trying to be able to do this back and trying to slow things down while your other reliever's getting warmed up or whatever.
Right.
So little things have changed the game.
Yeah.
Would these, guys who were playing in the 60s recognize or be able to get along with what the changes were? I don't know.
Who knows?
Right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. So what do you think about game changing and like how you can see it as a positive and negative?
Yeah, I think when it comes to the 2 words that were like getting thrown around in my head was the difference between you have innovators and you have influencers. And so I think in our social society, a lot of people are striving to become influencers, which for those, again, who are technology challenged, like whether it's on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, whatever, if you get to a certain amount of followers, then as an influencer, you can be sponsored.
Right.
And people will send your stuff. Actually, I had a friend, Chris Thompson, send over an article on a guy who started his own clothing company and had just bought like $100 million home in Hollywood area.
Wow.
But when he started out, it was like he was convinced his design was good and things like that. Well, then basically he got partnered up with some major influencers. And because of that influence, then his sales went through the roof. Well, so you got influencers and then you have innovators.
Right.
And I know, like, when we're talking about game changing, for me, I like at the core, and I don't even know where this came from. We would have to do another show just to like dice that down into, like, I've always felt like I've been an entrepreneur, been willing to take risk, go ahead and be self-employed, and stuff like that.
Right.
But I feel like, in that, like there's a part of innovation. Now, not innovation at the level of, again, a Bill Gates, I mean, like I go back to Edison, and everybody's like Edison and all of these patents and different things like that. But again, as I started the movie out for Ford versus Ferrari, one of the scenes is Henry Ford II shutting down the plant and telling the story of his grandfather walking home one night from Edison's cooperative. Edison called them a bunch of muckers. And these were young, bright minds that wanted to latch onto, here is the innovator of our time. And so they would come in and work 50 and 60-hour weeks, carrying out the tests of Edison's ideas. But it was in that think tank being surrounded by, all right, come to present day. Who's the owner of Amazon?
Jeff Bezos.
Jeff Bezos. So you take Jeff Bezos, who is ramping up Amazon, and he decides what he really wants to do is he wants a voice-activated, interactive thing to be able to let people be in their home and that they could call out and interact with the computer. But really what he was going for was something that could listen to what was going on around the house, so that the advertisements that were placed in front of them when they got to their computer were the things that they were talking about.
Right.
What's her name?
That would be Alexa.
Alexa.
Yeah, that would be the Amazon assistant.
So Alexa, the Amazon assistant, was actually, there's a book out right now about the chalkboard or the whiteboard drawing of him sitting down with his number two in command at the time, and how they brainstormed this thing together. Now, Bezos, he didn't get to the he was at the drawing board. He was the idea guy. And then he just sent people and he said, hey, unlimited supply of funding and financing, whatever it takes to get this. He knew it was that big of a game changer. So innovation moves into the changing of the game, and then depending on your influence or the lack of influence. So one of the ways that I look at life is like, do I need to build my social media network to be able to sell pottery? Or do I mean, like right now, Etsy's so inundated, and you can send people to Etsy to buy your stuff. They have an engine there so that you could have a store and you can be able to sell, and they make money off of when you sell. There's a local promoter here in Chicagoland that has, art fairs from May to September, from the Bean to Racine. I mean, like every weekend there's an art fair going on. And if you're a musician, which I'd like to think I am, you can go and you can play there for free. They don't pay you to be able to do that. But they have an engine where, it's a storefront, and they've set this up. They're like, hey, we'll pay for the back side of this. Now, they literally have hundreds of thousands of people through the summer come through these art fairs.
Right.
Who know them as a production team that are providing these art fairs. So they built a storefront engine, and you, as an artist, can load your stuff up, and you can have pictures of your stuff on site. Well, what do you have? You have a place where people who are specifically going to look for artwork that are going to a place that they know, and then be able to, do that. Well, who's the influencer? I think the production company's the influencer, and they're giving the artist, who's the innovator, the opportunity to be able to run with their creativity and their innovations. But go back to Bezos. For over 40 years, the federal government and scientists were trying to work on this voice recognition interaction with the computer. And so we move into the idea of how can we make the computer be able to interact and anticipate. Well, they said he got it done in 5 years, and they said that without him doing that, there never would have been. But who wants a TV that's listening to what's going on in your home?
Right.
So then there's, is that advancement? Is that not advancement?
Right. And so you can look at that technology to be able to say, because I believe that game changers, especially when you're looking at technology, are more towards innovative than they are influencing.
Sure.
So like innovation is key for game changing.
Yes.
Because you're thinking about things that people haven't thought about yet.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with Alexa. Now the cons of Alexa we've kind of sorted through.
Yeah.
But I think when you're looking at it, you're also saying like I didn't think of a time that we would be getting into direct marketing.
Yeah.
Like on a level that is completely different. I mean, you can talk about, direct marketing, meaning I've got a key demographic that I'm trying to hit, and this is what it's going to take in order to hit them.
Yeah.
Like you think about that and you're like, of course. So, I mean, you're looking at 18 to 39s. You're looking at,
Yeah.
like there's a group, there's a batch. But this is a whole level of like innovation that's saying we're not just going to direct target a group, we're going to direct target an individual.
Right.
And that's like a whole different game. And getting to those places where you're saying like, I don't even remember, saying this out loud. I remember thinking it. And somehow,
I'm telling you,
somehow it shows up.
I'm telling you that there have been things that I have thought, and it showed up in the feeds.
Yeah. And I don't believe the technology is there for that, but I don't know how that works, but I just say like that it gets to a crazy level. So when you start thinking about some of like, and we both enjoy sci-fi. So when you're looking at sci-fi,
I really like sci-fi.
Right. And so when you're seeing some of the stuff, especially when you're looking at advancements in technology where there's, where people are walking along and ads pop up in front of them. Or, there's
right.
like that thing that's like, it's not just visual on your phone or on your computer. Now it's popping up like just in front of you. There's ads everywhere.
Yeah.
And so thinking about that level of technology and you're saying like, I would not enjoy that. I would not enjoy being inundated to that level. I mean, it's almost like, and this is where they call a slippery slope, where it's like we're getting, direct marketing to individual direct marketing to we're going to inundate you with everything that you've thought or spoken about or searched for, and we're going to put it in front of you on a daily basis, moment by moment basis.
I just can't wait until the end of this show and like 3 hours later when I pull up my phone and I scroll through some social, what ads are going to come up based on this conversation? Right. Because neither one of us turned off our phones. No. And we both have computers up. I'm sure they're listening too. And like with all of that, it's so interesting. To me, it becomes an intrusion. There's another word that starts with an I. And that, and so what about privacy? Just borrowing that from my brothers across the pond.
Right.
You can tell I've been watching Ford versus Ferrari. And so.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that's a good, and those conversations are still being had, but and this is where the, like the double-edged sword comes in, because you're looking at something and saying, well, if I want to be a part of what's happening with the people around me, then I have to be involved with social media. I have to be involved with these technology innovations. Because if I'm not, then I'm not speaking the same cultural language as everyone else around me, and now I'm outside of culture. Now you can talk about being an outsider, and that's good, but until you're joining conversation and people are looking at you like you're an alien, like you're not speaking the same language. You're not even in the same conversation. Like we don't even know where you're coming from. So like I'm going to have a flip phone. Like, okay, like you can do that still. I mean, they haven't, banned or outlawed flip phones yet, but it's very hard to be able to get them.
Yeah.
Like you have to have, the month by month carriers in order to be able to even go back to a flip phone.
Yeah.
Like they're pushing people towards smartphones. And they're like, hey, you can spend $50 a month on a flip phone, or you can spend $50 a month on a smartphone.
Right.
Like you're being, I mean, it's almost
they make your privacy cost prohibitive.
Oh yeah. I mean, and that's where like eating healthy. Well, eating healthy is going to cost you. So would you rather eat like crap and spend less, or you can spend more and eat better? Like people are going to be like, "Oh, well, I like to spend less, so I guess I'm not going to eat healthy."
There's workarounds.
Right. I know. I was just like, it's just an example.
Yeah,
but,
no, and a really good one. I mean, but and quite frankly, then the ads for all of the junk food versus all of the farm to fork, are gonna once again come up.
It's true.
Yeah.
So we've been talking about game-changing technology or innovation.
Yeah.
So what other aspects of game-changing do you take into consideration?
Well, when I was thinking about the topic, I was just thinking about personally things that have changed the game in my life.
Right.
And so this is not yet a sponsor, but maybe could eventually become a sponsor.
Yeah.
I might even try that whole Amazon ads thing, for this podcast, since I'm going to throw out a couple items that were purchased on Amazon. And we'll see if people are like, oh, I want to go look at this. And, all you have to do is click on that. And then anything that you shop for, we get credit for.
Right.
I don't know. But the Zenny portable clothes washing machine, mini twin tub washer spinner, 9.9 pounds. So here's the game changer. I'm in the studio. And when you're in the studio working with clay, you got mud on your hands. So I've always got these shop towels that I'm wiping my hands off with, or I'm wiping up messes that I've made and things like that. And so working with clay, you can have, so many levels. If you go to YouTube and you just put, pottery, you can see people who are in third world countries that are pulling clay out of the side of a mountain and refining that and turning it into beautiful pottery.
Yeah.
I mean, even First Nations here in the United States, Indians for, hundreds and thousands of years would make just beautiful, beautiful works of art in a daily use function and idea. And actually, if you watched the Pottery Throwdown, they use a First Nations American Indian project in one of the seasons, one of the episodes. But to get back, innovation. So I thought, well, there's so much about reclaiming clay, and then you take it through and you to be able to recycle and reuse, because you don't throw away your scraps, because this is earth, this is Mother Earth that has been refined so that this can take place. And as all of that's going on, I've got these rags piling up. Well, I throw them in a bucket, and I thought, well, I'll do this analog. So I got a washboard.
Yeah.
And a washboard in a 15-gallon bucket, and I wash through. Well, what that does is that puts your hands in So then you have to think about latex gloves. Are you wearing gloves while you're washing these rags out? Oh, your hand just went below the water line, so then you're getting water in your gloves, and then you're dealing with alkaline with the clay and how that chews up your hands. And after working 2 days with clay, my hands are swollen right now, and I'm gonna get ready for another peel. I'm sure that it's on its way.
Yeah.
And this is all no worries. Choice to be a potter's mine.
Part of the process.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, I wonder if there's a way that I can be able to have a washer and it not be 350 pounds to bring up 3 flights of stairs. So I just Googled that up. Again, dealing with a different innovation to help me innovate.
Yeah.
And came up with an RV/apartment washer spinner. Now note, I'm not saying dryer because there's no dryer, there's no heating elements and all of this. The other thing I'm dealing with is anytime you wash stuff out that is from clay into a sink, you're going to have clogged pipe problems.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that every potter who's doing any kind of production is thinking about is now at schools, they're like, well, Steve, how did the schools have pottery classes? They've got a trap. There's a trap built into the drain, and so then the teacher has to come in after hours and every once in a while clean out the trap.
Empty it, yep.
And so, but that's really expensive investment. And so I'm working towards having water supplies that are self-contained, meaning that anytime I rinse, that I'm not pouring it down the sink or the toilet where the studio's at. So I got this thing, and I mean, it's fantastic. And I just did a bunch of glazing and had 10 rags that were full of all different colors of glaze and things like that. Just threw the 10 rags into this washer spinner. And I put it through the cycle on the wash twice, then spun it out, then brought it back and put in clean water for a spin. And I thought, I wonder how clean I can really get these things. So then I did another spin. So I got 15 gallons of water that's been through this, but now what I'll do is I'll reuse that from start to finish the next time I do the glaze, and I'll just commit that that's my glaze water for now.
Sure.
And I'm letting it all settle, and I learned, some of these things, but that was a game changer. Now I have clean rags. So now I got 30 rags, and I know that this thing can handle 10 to 12, maybe 15 rags at a time. And but if I want the water to swish through, you got to have space for the water to commingle with all the things that it's trying to get out.
Commingling waters.
Yes. And get that. But gosh, what a great thing. So maybe you're a person who likes to camp and you go for extended camp. This would be a great, self-contained. You can pour the water in, you can, drain it out, and stuff like that. I don't use a lot of soaps. I don't find that that's necessary. I'm not wearing this stuff. Mm-hmm. And there's no odor. But that was the problem I was running into. I'd throw these rags in a 15-gallon or a 10-gallon bucket of water and let them soak. And then I'd be like, I don't really want to wash that. I don't today.
Right.
So then like 3 to 4 weeks later, the water's turned brackish. And, I just ruined stuff and just out of my laziness and things like that. But what I did, here's my innovation.
Yeah.
It's not meant to be self-contained. It's meant to be a washer and a spinner that you put, and it's portable. You can put it into your bathroom, and so you're taking water from the tub or the sink, and then you're draining to the tub.
Yeah.
And you're doing regular wash. And so what I did is that I took the drain to go to the first 5-gallon bucket. From there, I attached from probably Northland Tools or Harbor Freight, a pump, and set that up. Now, for everybody who's worried about water and electricity, I made sure that none of the lines were able to drip over the electrical connections, and I set my foot pedal up higher than all of the pieces.
Right.
And so then I just go over to the push pedal, and it pumps the water that's drained from the washer into a 5-gallon bucket. The 5-gallon bucket goes up through the pump, through a filter that's meant for a house, and then it dumps from the filter into the other bucket. And at that point, I can use the same water that I used to wash,
Right.
I can use for the second rinse. And then after that second rinse, what I'm doing is then that's when I'm introducing the brand new clean water for the final rinse. And yeah, so now I'll see how long I can use this water, because all of the heavies, that's not true. A lot of the heavies in the glaze water, I'm capturing from the brushes, and I'm dumping that in small quantity. And then, so I'll just have to navigate through and see what's going on. But I do use, for all of the process, before it gets to the washer, I'm soaking things and rinsing, kind of squeezing things out so that the heavy stuff isn't even going through my system. And there's one part where, like, in suspension, like, there's not stuff at the bottom of the bucket. It's just that whatever's there is light enough to be suspended in the water. Now, that takes me down a bad path in my head, because I'm like, well, if this is suspended, I should be able to just flush this down the toilet. I'm not going to do that. And people are like, what do you do with that water? Well, I mean, there's trees all over Chicago.
Right.
There's places of foliage.
And those minerals aren't going to affect the tree life.
It's
or the plant
non-toxic.
life. Right.
Actually, what I'm using comes straight from the earth. Mm-hmm. It's dirt. It's minerals.
Right.
And there's a potter in Minnesota that uses, and the Indians did this too. You want different colors, you use different plant life, because the plants bring up different minerals of source. And so, like, they kept track and documented, if you want yellows, use this plant. If you want blues, use this plant. And it boils down into a chemistry technology of this chemical produces this color.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's
anyway.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, game changer for me. Now, I had a lovely teacher that taught me the process of working with clay. Now, my question for me to have to deal with is, what do I want to accomplish with the time frames? The beautiful part is I can do the wash now while I'm glazing. And then I hang it up. When I come back, my towels are dry, and I'm, good to go. Well, what did that save me? Probably 3 hours. That's 3 hours I can move into production. Right now, when I reclaim clay, I let it all dry out, add water to it. Once it gets all, soaked in, then I take the blender to it, which is basically a screwdriver with a paddle on the end of it. Stir it up, get it so that everything's saturated and mixed up. Then I put it on a plaster bat, let it dry out, blah, 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 blah. Then I move that over. Literally, for me to reclaim 50 to 60 pounds of clay takes about 2 weeks. Now, that's of drying time. That's not like 2 weeks of my actual work time.
Yeah.
But they make puggers. And puggers, you can just take dry clay, put it in, pour in some water. It chews it all up into a really fine, then works it. It has an air compressor that is a suction compressor that takes all the air out, and it spits out this log. It's basically a machine that chews up and poops out good clay.
Poop and clay.
But one of those machines,
clay.
like,
That's
even
good.
entry level, is like $2,000 to $3,000.
Yeah.
Well, why does it cost so much? Because they know about the efficiencies. Now we're moving into, from the hand toil, the work, the elementary work, into the industrial revolution.
Right.
So we're back to Edison and Tesla.
Right.
We're back to let's wire and light up New York City. We're back into what about these major conveniences and how convenient they are. And so anyway, yeah. So, like, in my life right now, that is the item, because at the time I was working on the project a couple weeks ago, and I was like, this is a game changer. What a great topic. All right, cool.
Yeah, because you were also talking about how, the Gather Coals were using their air fryer, and they believed that was a game changer for them.
You know what?
Right.
For them, like that, and to see the vibrancy in their voices about talking about, dude,
How they excited they were.
you've got to try this. This is awesome. Now, again, I'm an analog kind of guy to the point of when it comes to cooking, man, I've got great news. So 2 days before our lease is due for us to figure out if we're moving out or for, we start rethinking the rental structure.
Yeah.
At House Coble LaCroix.
Mm-hmm.
And so Amy's on a trip and she's like, hey, I think we should look for a different place to live. I'm like, okay. And so we do this and start looking around the area and we're like, no, we're good. And so we're going to be for at least another year in Winnetka. But the cool thing is that the management group changed last year. Well, then with a 12% increase in rent gave us pause.
Yeah.
But in current market, everyone went through a 12% raise increase. And so they were just doing industry standard. Why? Because they're there to make money.
Right.
They're not a social network of taking care of others at the cost from themselves.
Right.
So, but the cool thing is they sent us over a new contract. Well, they're a new management company. Guess who has a Weber grill sitting on the patio today? This guy. For a year and a half, I have not been able to barbecue at my own home.
Yeah.
It is 1 point. There's only 2 points of sadness in Winnetka. The parking garage situation, which is, I mean, you get into that when you're renting, you know, how many spots are available.
Sure.
And we've talked about parking around Chicagoland, so.
It's not good.
No. So then, especially when you get into this situation, it's, I mean, like a 7-unit townhome situation, and, you know, I think there's 8 single-car garages, and then you have, you know, people who have 2 cars, or families that have 2 cars.
Yeah.
So anyway, long story short, I read through the thing, and it gave the descriptors of what you have to do if you're going to have a barbecue. You got to be 10 feet away from the house. You can't do it on if you have a wooden patio or a wooden walkout, or what do they call those things that are like a deck?
Yeah.
And so, which we don't have that. Now, technically, I can't be 10 feet away from the house and 10 feet away from the wooden fence of the patio. But the house is made out of block, right. So I don't really consider that a viable, like, thing.
Yeah.
But I went ahead and I bought a Weber grill.
Webers are good girls.
And lump charcoal. Well, see, so then can I cook on gas? Yes. Yes, I can. Is a gas barbecue grill an innovation? Somebody thought so at the time.
Sure.
You know, what about all these pellet smokers?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now that's taken the art of smoking meat and put it in the hands of the commoners.
Sure.
You know, okay, that's cool.
Right.
Enjoy your smoked meat. But this guy's just like old school. Now, when I say old school, I'm going old school back to 1960s when the Weber grill was invented, or like actually like being distributed.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad got one in shipping that was damaged, and he brought it home, and we became a Weber family. Yeah. And so I'm just saying I'm a really happy guy based on change. Change is not something that's always embraced by humanity. We actually talk about that quite a bit.
We do.
But, you know, that's another game changer in my life.
Yeah. Weber is home in Illinois, so that's where their corporate is.
Really?
Yep.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So
I'm going to look that up on
there's I think a Weber restaurant downtown too, which I think then I'm assuming that they have a lot of barbecued items. So
well, I sure would hope so.
I haven't eaten there, so I can't vouch for it or not, but I know it exists because I've driven by it, I've walked by it, so it's hard to not see it because I think they even have like a big sign out on the corner. So yeah, it's kind of a state for Weber. Weber's big here in Illinois. Lots of people like to use Webers.
Yeah. Well, so I have the Weber original kettle, 22-inch. Now, I'm not really sure what Bezos is doing on Amazon right now, but apparently you put a bestseller ticket on the one that costs $219, and the one right underneath it is $139, and it's the same product. So if you want to overpay, always go for the bestseller. And I also see that they do have a Weber Smokefire EX4 and an EX6. And I would submit that the EX4 is a lovely shape, size pellet. But I'm going to tell you this. I just have a hard time in my life spending $1,100 on a grill.
Agreed.
And so I'm just not willing to jump over the edge. Now, I've watched a lot of moonshiners in the last few weeks. And I've watched, there's actually on Netflix, there's a barbecue cook-off thing.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
I learned a lot.
I've watched it.
I've learned a lot about barbecue with that. It was a lovely show. I hope they come back for a second season. And so, yes, social medias, I'm talking to you. So Netflix, for all of the heartache that I gave you a few weeks ago, just know that stuff like that's good family fun right there.
It is.
Yeah.
Even though my wife doesn't like watching them. So I usually am watching it.
How about you, Phil? Do you have any game changers in your own life that you're excited about?
Yeah, I mean, I think partially for me, when I'm looking at things that have kind of changed direction, and not a sponsor, but like HelloFresh was like something that helped. I mean, we started during the pandemic because then we didn't have to shop as much.
Right.
But it also brought back a little bit of I do enjoy cooking.
Yeah.
And so it did change the way. I mean, whether or not, we'll continue with HelloFresh, into perpetuity is not the question, but it's more like it did change the way that, that we had to go shopping.
Sure.
That we had to, what supplies did we need? I mean, so that kind of helped us to be able to, try to really understand direction. And, it was like, because before, this is usually the way it would go down is like, hey, Heather, what do you want to eat for dinner? I don't know. What do you want to eat for dinner? And they were always like, I don't know. I mean, so, and then there's you could do, I mean, and this is a smart way is to plan things out, right? Is to say, all right, so let's look at if we're going to do, 5 dinners Monday through Friday.
Right.
Then what are we going to eat on those 5 days and planning everything out and then shop accordingly and make sure you have all the supplies for it. So that could be smart. That could be a good way to be able to do it.
How about we call it a theory?
Right.
That's one theory.
It's one theory.
It's one theory.
Right.
Then there's also the theory of indecision.
Right.
Like, hey, in the moment, what are you hungry for?
Yeah.
So when you guys are in a car driving somewhere, that's a similar question, right?
Right.
Hey, what are you hungry for?
Yeah.
And then Heather's response is,
she's like, most of the time, I don't know. What do you want? And what I always go back to, I mean, this I've always found to be it's an endless loop. And what it gets to is like, cause I am less picky, when it comes, like, if you tell me we're going to eat out, then you give me a location and I'll find something to eat. Absolutely 100% guaranteed. You say, hey, we're going to go to Taco Bell. Okay, then let's go to Taco Bell. This is what I'm going to eat. Like, I already have that in mind. Like, I can eat anything anywhere.
Right.
There's always going to be something. So, like, don't put it on me to be able to say that because what I'll say is, hey, we should go here. No, I don't really feel like that. Okay. Like, so then it's not about what I want. It's more about where do you want to go so that we can find it. So these are the discussions that have been removed now because it's like, nope, we've got to, and HelloFresh comes in, you can do 5 days a week. We
Sure.
do, I think we've switched between 3 and 4.
Yeah.
Because we already know that there are some days of the week that I don't have time to cook.
So go back to HelloFresh.
Yeah.
And so in HelloFresh, you go to your computer, and then you're basically looking through menu items.
Yep.
That you click a box.
Right.
And then based on that, delivery time is how long?
Well, they deliver every week. So
Right. So it's a weekly delivery. So from the time that you order, how long does it take to get there?
Well, I think you try to. You're always I think there's a deadline, and I think it's this is also where I miss. I tell Heather she can go on and and pick whatever it is. I think it's like always like a week or week and a half in advance.
See, and I'm just giving people who have never heard of this service an idea of the process.
Right.
So if you want HelloFresh tomorrow, don't plan on that.
Oh yeah, they won't. Because it's a weekly.
Okay, so so if you want to get into a cycle and give it a try, you can do that.
Right, and they have great. Introductory stuff will be like, hey, we'll give you a week's free meals or whatever. So,
Yeah.
There's great introductory stuff for it. So all of that is there, but to me, what it eliminated was like sitting around and then waiting until 7 o'clock in order to figure out what we're going to eat. And then it was like, all right, then we have to cook it. And then we're eating by 8.
Yeah.
It's removed that. So,
Yeah.
There's days when I start cooking, I'll start cooking at 5:30. We'll be eating by 6:30.
Yeah.
So it's there's a definite, like, it's taking out some of the decision process because it's already planned. Now that's where I said the other theory was you plan it out and you shop for yourself. That's fine. But what we found is like this helps us to be able to say we're taking out decision. The only decision we're going to do is like we've got 4 meals and what are we going to have first, second, and third, and fourth?
Right.
And that's it. So the decision is less, and you get your, and you can do, vegetarian packages. You can do, so like it varies. Like you can pick very health conscious stuff in HelloFresh that are going to be lower calories as well. Or you can just say, hey, we're just looking for a meal, so it's very, now it can be expensive if you're saying we're going to do 5 meals.
Yeah.
It can be expensive.
Now, from those 5 meals, you talked about bouncing from 3 to 4. Are there meals where you have leftovers?
Yes.
So this is something, again, for the listener. You don't have to buy a full week.
Right.
And if in your habit of living, eating out is a part of what you do during the week or on the weekend, depending. You can plan that in accordingly, and for 3 meals a week, you probably can get a really good start to a full week's worth of food, and that's why you're bouncing between 3 and 4 on a question mark of how that goes. Now, the other thing in context that most people should understand is how long does it take for you to drive to a grocery store? And I'm not saying the quickest and easiest, but a place that's reasonable, mid-range. It's not Whole Foods, but it's not Aldi necessarily. So like Mariano's or Jewel-Osco in
probably 20 to 25 minutes round trip, which is still little over a mile.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. So then it comes into time management
right.
and value of time. So to take a look at it, then depending on, now we're talking about cost of gasoline.
Right.
And just to put a stake in the ground for the grandchildren and for the generations to come,
Right.
we were at a somewhat normal gas range level through the Obama administration and into the Trump administration and then into the Biden administration. I would just generalize between $2.75 and $3.75 a gallon for gas. But right now we're in the middle of a outright war between Russia and Ukraine, and that is got all the markets spinning, and nobody knows what is really up and really how it's affecting gas prices. But the reality is, in Chicago proper, you can pay $5 or more for a gallon of gas if you're not paying the cash price. There are deals. I filled up in Winnetka for Amy's car Sunday night or Sunday afternoon and paid $4.69 a gallon. On Monday, when I was driving my car and I was running errands, I was able to pick up gasoline at Costco for $4.39.
Yeah.
So you're talking about 30 cents difference, and it's like, gosh, for every 3 gallons, I just saved $1. And it comes back down to a fabled fatherly Coble saying that it's not always about the money you make, it's about the money you spend. And so if you're committed to spending money, you should be committed to making it. If you're committed to not making money, you should be committed to not spending it. Right. Otherwise, in that mathematical equation, in both scenarios, you're going to end up in a financial difficulty. But all jesting aside, one of the things that you have to take into account is you have to take into what it cost you to get somewhere. Now, if I said, hey, Phil, you could save a bunch of money at Aldi, how long would it take you to get to an Aldi?
Well, I can get to an Aldi a little bit quicker than I can get to Jewel.
Really?
Yeah, because Aldi's right there on Pulaski.
Okay.
Right, so it's Pulaski in between Lawrence and Foster is where the Aldi is.
Okay.
If you go to Foster, that's where Jewel is.
Okay.
So it all depends.
I know where Jewel is on Foster because I drive by it every day
right.
when I'm leaving to commute back home.
So you go up to Foster.
Oh, yeah. Foster the people.
Foster the people.
Yep. Go to Foster. Pass by the synagogue. Wave to the little boys who are playing baseball. They hit them out into the. You got to be careful around the Jewish synagogue and the Jewish school because when they're playing baseball, baseballs can fly, windshields can be damaged. I mean,
so they could be power hitters, huh?
Kids can be hit by cars. That's all not exciting though. So we bring it out. The other thing that HelloFresh does is they send you a recipe. And you're able to follow the recipe, you're able to learn the recipes, and if you're someone who enjoys cooking but you don't feel very strong in it, it gives you a structure that's safe to be able to venture out into. Right. Now, everybody's listening to me and they're like, wow, Steve, you really like HelloFresh. No, I like HelloFresh for Phil and his family because in a looking in the mirror situation, you have to take heart to be able to identify where you're really at.
Right.
In my home, the conversation goes like this. Hey, babe, what do you want tonight? Here's 3 choices. I'm able to make whichever you're hungry for. With an understanding that that's option A. Option A has 3 choices. Mm-hmm. Option B is we do whatever else she wants. So she's like, yeah, none of that sounds good. How about we order Marcaroma and we have pizza tonight? I'm like, which, I mean, typically that's the cast off, like, hey, really it boils down to, hey, I haven't had pizza for a week and I'd really like pizza. Well, I'm Can I make pizza? Yeah, I can, but it's not like a Pizza House pizza. I mean, it's not.
Right.
And so, and I've done gluten-free pizza crust, and I've done homemade pizza. It's not like but as a rule, for us in our taste buds, we'd like to have pizza that's been prepared by someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And and there's 3 viable choices, in our neck of the woods that we really enjoy, and we kind of rotate, or it just depends on. What I'm really glad about concerning the meal preparation is now I got a Weber grill.
Right.
Oh man, yeah.
So which one did you go with on the Weber?
I went with the 22-inch classic original kettle.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
That's good.
Charcoal.
Mm-hmm.
Light it and leave it.
Right.
Walk back. I'm looking for one of my favorite meals to make on the grill is a pork loin.
Yeah.
Another one that I'm going to be willing to try, and we don't eat beef a lot.
Yeah.
But I want to do a standing rib. Prime rib.
Yeah.
Last night, it just got too late in the studio. My plan is to swing by Mariano's because they got one of the best meat counters. I've shopped for meat through a lot of the different places, and price, quality, I'm going to bounce between. I like Mariano's better than Costco. If we're having guests in, I'll go to Costco because per volume you get a better deal.
Sure.
And quite frankly, I'll eat chicken and pork from Aldi, but I don't want to eat my beef from Aldi. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's not anything against Canada, Germany, South America. I don't care where they're getting their beef. I just don't like how it's processed. I
could see that too.
If I live in Iowa, you know where I'm going? Fairway.
Mm-hmm.
Best meat counter in all of the. Now, is Hy-Vee's meat counter good? Yeah, it's good. But do you want to pay twice as much for your beef? No, because I'm learning. What am I going to do? I'm either going to spend the money or earn the money, and if I'm going to be the person who's doing the shopping for the groceries, I'm going to be saving the money.
Right.
Yeah.
So I would say. Yeah, that's what I would be looking to do too. I mean, in Aldi, I think, like chicken. I mean, so Heather gets real picky. I mean, she doesn't eat any chicken on the bone. Like it has to be bone.
Amy doesn't either.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's always like, Aldi has some of the ones they mix in, whether it's a thigh, it's a breast, what I mean?
Yeah.
And it all, then a lot of times their cheaper ones are going to be ones on the bone, which like I'm okay with. I like to be able to cook those, but
yeah,
like I've had to switch that, and we just do boneless, skinless.
Yeah, boneless, skinless. You can get thighs, boneless. You can get tenders, boneless, chicken breast. I mean, like that's there. Or you know what? You can get a pork loin. And there's no bone in that.
True
that. Yeah. So innovation, and it's just like the culmination. It always cracks me up. And I want to depersonalize this because, I mean, like, I think a lot of people run into that same conversation. Hey, what are you hungry for? Oh, I don't care. I don't know what I'm hungry for, and it's like, my daughter, Michaela, she's like learned herself, and she's like, yeah, I'm an eliminator. If I go to a restaurant, I don't come to the table with what I want to have.
Yeah.
I look at the menu and eliminate what I don't want. Me personally, what I've challenged myself to do, because I can be this creature of habit. I challenge myself that if I'm going to a restaurant more than probably 3 or 4 times, I'll just try something off the menu that I've never had just for this adventure of I need to bump myself out of the rut. I already know what I like.
Right.
But I'm totally with you. And when somebody's like, well, what are you in the mood for? I'm like, I'm in the mood for wherever you'll make a decision we go.
And that's where.
And they're like, what? I'm like, when it comes to food, I couldn't care less. And what I will say is there are times if I've got a craving, I'll be very verbal.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, but food for me isn't a fulfilling love language kind of thing. Like, I'm like, oh, I have this craving every day about I'm like, and quite frankly, to me, it's all the same.
Mm-hmm.
So taco meat, what is that? It's ground up meatloaf with just some different seasoning.
Right.
It's sloppy joes without the sloppy.
It's true.
You know, I mean, like, it's hamburgers without the bun. It's got the crunchy shell or the soft shell. You know, I can eat cilantro on any salad. I really like it on tacos. I mean, I can take anything and turn it into a taco. What, you got eggs? Oh, yeah, great. Breakfast burritos. Well, there's sausage and bacon with that. Absolutely. Yeah, we can do that. You know. Oh, hold it. You've got leftover grilled chicken? Yes, I do. I am going to have grilled chicken quesadillas. Oh, you mean there's sloppy Joe meat there? Uh-huh. You know what that is? That's blue collar meat in the south of the border. We're going to throw that in a taco shell. I can eat tacos every day of the week and sometimes twice a day, which may have happened yesterday. I had a breakfast burrito for breakfast, and then for dinner, I took an old pot roast and added Caribbean jerk seasoning, stirred that all up with some adobada and seasoning, and pulled out the wide mouth crunchy shells. And man, all of a sudden you put some salsa and sour cream on that, and I crunched my way into a sleepy oblivion. Yeah. So it's just, you know, it's just food.
Yeah, I agree. You know, it depends on the place, but I always like to say, like, what haven't I had? Like, I don't mind being adventurous, but that's the problem is that my kids are not adventurous.
Sure.
So they're like, I said, hey, you know, like, there's these new places. Let's go try something. We haven't been there. Like, I know we haven't been there. It's like the exploration of something new, and they're like, oh. I said, can you imagine, you know, that you know, like you've never gone to a place, and you're like, what happens if that's gonna be your favorite food? Like, you have to try it someday in order to even get to know what you love right now. Like, there has to be some adventure in this in order to even find that out. Like, why can't we try something?
Right. Man, when we were in Grand Rapids a few weeks ago, we were going for dinner, and we found this Indian place in downtown Grand Rapids. Absolutely fantastic food experience, the whole thing.
Yeah.
And downtown Grand Rapids is suffering because of the pandemic and travel and all that stuff. So the places that were open and things like that. Man, and I had barbecue there. I will say, because of how Chicagoland is divided up and parsed out and different things, that is one thing that I miss about Des Moines. Des Moines' consolidation of microbreweries and the ability to get to different places.
It's true.
Within, like, just such a short distance. I mean, you're not 10 minutes from being able to go to 3 different places, and it's even more prolific in the East Village. I mean, there's places popping up. There's places that Mike is telling me about that I've never been to, just because some of my favorite spots.
Well, then you get the Iowa Taproom that has, like, all Iowa beers.
Oh, yeah. Between that and El Bait Shop, I mean, like, a sampling can occur within literally less than a quarter of a mile. That's just incredible. But that's the other thing, too, about the food in Des Moines. You have the eccentricities of the sampling within a close proximity. And so, but in Chicago, like, I mean, whether it's Pakistani, Afghani, you know, any of the kebabi type things, Thai, and there's only one barbecue place that I've been to in Chicago, and it happens when I'm around the studio because it's in proximity. It's so close, and I have not I'm like, gosh, where? I mean, now, and the places in Winnetka, I mean, like the Mexican food there is horrible. I mean, it's just not good. Well, not when I can walk 3 blocks and get authentic, at the corner. I just have to make sure I have cash in my pocket.
I know, that is the problem.
But anyway, so not to turn this into a foodie show, but innovation. And so maybe down the road, we actually get an influencer on to talk about what drives them. You brought up at the last podcast, you started bringing up stuff about cult leadership. I don't want to go there.
But influencers.
Right. That's what comes to mind as far as, like the ability to influence others into a direction.
Right. And that's the reason why I would say that influencers aren't necessarily game changers, but they could be, I guess, a game changer for somebody.
Critical mass.
Right.
For a person to get to critical mass where this thing is rolling and continues to roll, and but again, influencers and what gives. I would never consider myself an influencer on social media. I think social media shows up, and if I post something, they're like, "Oh, of course, it's another podcast,"
right?
And there's a part where, I mean, again, we've talked about how the pandemic has changed people, changed us, and things like that. And so it just moved me to a place to consider that with pottery, arts and art, and things like that. Actually, I'm working on a thing to turn the doodle drawings into NFTs. And my mom sent me an article where there's a guy who's selling his art, quote unquote, online. But man, yeah, there's a place in my portfolio for the doodle drawing stuff that I've done in the past, and actually I'm currently practicing. It takes so much time, to complete a piece, and so, who knows? But I just think, like, man, I think that there's a part of me that was asking the question about innovation in game-changing things to just be from a point of reflection. Hey, can't we be grateful for the innovators who've come before us?
Right.
And, and if you're not an innovator, I mean, can't we at least sit in this place, and just be able to share the goodness with others about the things that, really are good.
Right.
The other day I walked out the door and turned off the lights, and I thought, yeah, this is just being a good steward, but gosh, thank you, Edison. And quite frankly, for the ability to communicate with aliens, thank you, Tesla.
Right. Oh, yeah.
But I love in Ford versus Ferrari when, you're looking at Shelby, and, here's the first American to be able to win Le Mans. And he just hits the West Coast, and he's like, oh, there's all these people with money. I'm going to make fast cars.
Right.
And then it moves, from fast cars to Ford winning Le Mans, I think 3 or 4 times out of 5 years under the direction of Shelby. And, Iacocca took over after Henry Ford II, the Ford Motor Company, and Iacocca's influence and friendship with Shelby, and just things. But I mean, like, to just drop the line, yeah, my grandfather was walking home from the Edison Cooperative, and stuff like that. I'm like, wow, brilliant people.
Right.
And for people who are thinking outside of the box in ways, for innovation. And so then Elon Musk and Bezos and, these people, they have a critical mass of accumulation of wealth that allows them to be able to invest into what some companies would call research and development. Power and control.
And I think that the wealth gives them an opportunity to not just imagine but actually say, I can make this possible with the resources that I have. Like, so they don't just think about it, and that's where innovation says, I'm thinking about it, but I'm also figuring out a way to apply it.
Yeah.
And so if Bezos, as he was young, thinking about, I want to do space exploration, like, as a child, he probably didn't have a lot of opportunities to do that.
Is Bezos space or is Musk space?
Both of them.
Oh, really?
SpaceX is Musk, and I don't know, Bezos has another. That's the people that he's sending some celebrities to space, but it's really not space. It's kind of like outside the, but it's like
first heaven.
Right.
Yeah. Atmospheric space.
Right.
Like above where planes could. Somebody said something in the movie like, yeah, if I told you what an airplane really is, basically airplane is the art of falling. But it doesn't really translate well when you're saying, hey, by the way, we're going to put you up in the air and let you fall to New York. That's not a way to attract customers, so they didn't ever tell anybody that. But basically, it's a tin can falling.
Yeah, it's for sure.
Yeah.
But, thinking about not having air travel, that would be a game-changing innovation.
Actually, one of the inspirational speakers that you and I have seen at different conferences and such, he was saying that travel has become, he was putting it out there, hey, if you haven't traveled on an airplane for a while, just know that when you get back, it's not going to be the same that it was pre-pandemic. He goes, currently for bookings, he is booking 2 refundable flights so that he can, because he's got to get there in deadlines, right?
Right.
So he's booking 2 refundable flights in case something goes wrong with one.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks,
right.
butthead. Whose seat did you just take who could have been? And then he cancels out, but this person who needed to. But you know what? If one of his tickets actually got canceled because of whatever was going on, nobody on that flight got to go. So anyway, but that's what he's doing is he's doing that so he can make sure he gets to his speaking engagement.
They for sure are overselling on flights.
Yeah.
In order to make back what they lost during pandemic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Height of pandemic.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we definitely have run a little bit longer today.
Well,
than what we were shooting for.
I think we're in reasonable limit, and we stuck to our top. Like, we covered our topic well.
We did.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely talked about innovation. And yeah, I mean, I think there's another layer of game changing where we can look at people.
Yeah.
Not just people who are innovators, but actually game changing people in your life too.
Yeah.
So like people who get you to think differently, people that act differently. I mean, that's the reason why if you look up game changing, you'll find like there's game changers in your life. Like when you're talking about marriage is a game changer. Why? Because you have to think differently once you're married.
Yeah.
And if you don't think differently, chances are you're not going to be married very long.
Procreation.
Right. Procreation. Game changer. Right. Yeah. I mean, so there's big moments that you talk about, milestones or whatever, but they can be game changers in your life.
Well, maybe we continue this.
Maybe.
Should we go into the next level the next time?
Sure.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds great. So this is part 1.
Part 1, Game Changers.
Game Changer Part 1. Hey, thank you so much for listening, everyone. We're just really, really glad to be not in rhythm. We're in the flow.
We're in the flow.
I got a flow I could spit down. I was actually told never to rap again. That's like side by side next to, don't beatbox.
Oh, I thought it was like don't dance.
So there's 3 do not do's on my list. Yeah. So anyway, but I like to make stuff up, so I try to spit that rhyme. I was listening to rap the other day, and I had to turn the channel because it's not that I didn't like the music. It's what they were beeping out was so excessive that like all I'm doing is kind of hearing beat and just empty every time they were bleeping it out. So I thought, I'll listen to something else.
Right. Skip.
I have Spanish radio on my radio too.
There you go.
just for a change of pace. I figure it's part of our culture.
Which Spanish and a lot of the Spanish music very similar to the polka of the Germans.
And Poland right now is a redeeming, saving entity with what's going on with Russia and Ukraine. Yeah. Poles take a lot of bad rap, and we're here to say thank you. Thank you for being a nation that will take people in. Yeah.
Receiving them.
Well,
all right, everybody.
We're going to say goodbye.
Great
Until
to be with everyone today.
Happy Sunday.
See ya.